Manchester, the early 1960s. Britain was changing. New music filled the radio, the economy was improving, teenagers had money to spend, fashion was evolving, and for many families, the future looked brighter than ever before. Children walked to school on their own, they played in parks until dusk, parents expected them home in time for tea. It was a different world. But a handful of families across Greater Manchester, ordinary days became unimaginable nightmares. One child disappeared, then another, then another. At first, nobody believed the cases were connected. Missing children were sadly not unheard of, and police investigated each disappearance as an individual tragedy. But as the months passed, a horrifying pattern slowly began to emerge. What investigators would eventually uncover would become one of Britain's most darkest criminal cases. A case that changed policing, changed how parents viewed child safety, and left wounds remained open for more than 60 years. Today's episode isn't about creating notoriety for those responsible. Their names are written into history. Instead, this episode is about the children whose futures were stolen, the families who spent years searching for answers, and the detectives who faced one of the most disturbing investigations Britain has ever known. I'm Lisa, and this is Say It Anyway. Before we begin, I want to make something clear. Today's episode discusses the murder of children. There is no graphic descriptions, but the subject matter is deeply unsettling. This script has been researched using court records, police investigations, and historical sources. My aim isn't to sensationalise this case, it is to remember the victims, to understand the investigation, and to tell the story with respect it deserves. To understand this case, we have to understand Britain in the early 1960s. The Second World War had become a memory. The Beatles were beginning to change music forever. Harold Macmillan has famously told the country that many people have never had it so good. Life felt hopeful. Communities were close-knit, neighbours knew one another, and children were given freedoms that today would be seen as unimaginable. Walking home from school alone, catching buses, meeting friends in town, all perfectly normal. Parents worried? Of course they did. But few imagined that someone would deliberately target children. That innocence would soon disappear forever. Our story begins on the evening of the 12th of July, 1963. 16-year-old Pauline Reed left home planning to go to a dance. She was described as kind, quiet, and dependable. She had plans for the future. Friends expected to see her that evening, and she never arrived. When Pauline failed to return home, her family became increasingly concerned. Police searched, friends searched, volunteers searched, and weeks turned into months. Months became years. No trace of Pauline could be found. For her family, there were no answers, only questions. At the time, the police had no reason to suspect they were dealing with something larger. Pauline was officially listed as missing. Nobody knew she would become the first known victim in a series of crimes that would horrify Britain. Just over a year later, on the 23rd of November 1964, 12-year-old John Kilbride visited Ashton Market. Like countless children his age, he'd gone into town alone, and when he didn't come home, his family immediately knew something was wrong. The search began almost immediately, and police officers, volunteers and neighbours, hundreds of people, were looking for John. And his photograph appeared in newspapers. People checked parks, canals, building sites, anywhere a frightened child might be found, but once again, nothing. For John's parents, every knock on the door brought hope, every telephone call made their heart race, but the news they desperately wanted to hear never came. Keith Bennett. Less than 7 months later, another child disappeared. Just 12 years old, Keith left home on the 16th of June 1964 to visit his grandmother, but he never arrived. His mother, Winnie Johnson, would spend the rest of her life searching for her son. She refused to give up hope. Year after year, decade after decade, she appealed for information, pleaded for someone, anyone, to reveal where Keith had been left. Sadly, she would never receive the answers she deserved during her lifetime. Her determination became one of the most heartbreaking stories connected to this case. Then came Christmas, Boxing Day 1964. Families were celebrating, children were enjoying new toys, markets and fairgrounds were full of excitement, and 10-year-old Leslie Ann Downham visited a fairground. Like so many children, she became separated from those she was with. She vanished. Within hours, the police launched a massive search. Her disappearance dominated headlines. People wanted to believe she'd be found alive. Instead, fear spread across Greater Manchester. Parents began holding their children's hands a little tighter. Communities started locking doors they never thought to lock before. For the first time, people began wondering, could these possible disappearances somehow be connected? Police couldn't yet answer that question, but events were already moving towards a breakthrough. One that would expose the terrible truth and shock an entire nation. Next time, a murder witnessed by someone who escaped would finally unravel the mystery. Police would discover evidence unlike anything they have ever encountered before, and Britain would begin to understand the true scale of what truly happened. I'm Lisa, this is Say It Anyway, and this is to be continued.